Church, cult, church. So we get bored someplace else every Sunday. Does this really change our day-to-day lives?
Of course not.
I'm not leaving my home.
I'm afraid it's our home now. This house will become the new local welcome center for this district.
And it didn't cost us a dime.
Homer's just so stupid.
You have so much more faith in humanity than me. No one's as dumb as Homer. No, a lot of people are, though.
We're Ted and Lisa, and we're nonprofit consultants. Now, nonprofit stuff shows up in culture all the time. Sometimes it is way off base, and other times it's way too true. Today, let's look at Homer joining a cult.
Have you heard of Krishna consciousness?
This part is a crazy man.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Right, that'll work.
A new and better life awaits you on our distant home planet, Blistonia.
Makes sense.
Once we collect enough money for fuel, our leader will throw open the doors of the Forbidden Barn, where we will all board our intergalactic vehicle, rows 1 through 30 first. Upon our arrival, we will begin our new perfect lives on Blistonia, well known for its high levels of bliss.
Hey, I don't know about you, but they're not exactly winning me over with these lousy production values here.
Oh my gosh. Homer Simpson's always getting himself into trouble, and apparently now a lot of other people in town are also interested in this very...
It's a cult.
I love this episode because a lot of times nonprofits get labeled as cults, and what we're watching is actually a cult. Mm-hmm. And there are similarities for sure between organizations, but a lot of times those similarities are just because they're all organizations.
Right.
And we have to figure out which things are cults and which things are just an organizational thing.
Now, if you're listening going, I don't know organizations that have ever been labeled a cult. What happens typically is when an organization grows very, very quickly and a lot of people get excited and then they start talking about it and almost... like talking about it so enthusiastically, and you have to join, you have to be a part of this, you have to whatever, and adopting this mindset in a very intense way. It's not necessarily that the organization is a cult, but from the outside, people looking in are like, this, like, you're not explaining what's happening very well. It feels too hypey. It feels like you're all just there because it feels good. And sometimes this can be because people don't know how to articulate a vision. It could be because people are so reliant on these outlier stories versus getting a good base level of actual metrics. There are a lot of things that can go into this, but it'll be kind of funny to compare that to this episode.
You're free to leave whenever you want, but would you mind telling us why?
Oh, I just didn't, I didn't think, it's pretty good.
Man, this whole place puffs of the wacky tobacco. I'm out of here.
Going somewhere? Though free to do so.
Now, they're just rearranging my underwear. Ah, there it is.
Have you ever seen this? I mean, like, we've seen a lot.
I mean, I've never seen the spotlights showing up on people, but I've definitely seen this happen where it's like, if you are looking at leaving an organization or leaving a volunteer team or, you know, not being a donor anymore, it's almost like you feel like everybody is watching you. A lot of times people stay just because they feel so guilty leaving.
This happens when leadership relies on social pressure versus addressing an issue. And so I've heard leaders be like, well, I mean, we tell them they can leave. It's like, there's a difference between telling people that they can go and showing them that they are actually safe to exit.
Another thing that's interesting with this is that they all had different reasons that they were looking to leave. Carl was looking to leave because the production quality was really bad. So he got up and then the social pressure was turned on to keep him staying. Otto was like, this place smells bad. I'm leaving because it smells bad. The social pressure is then turned on to keep him there. And I think that happens a lot, like you were saying earlier, rather than actually addressing the real issues that are going on inside of an organization. And sometimes they're surface level, like production value or smell, but sometimes they're deeper, like the people aren't being treated well here, or we're not actually accomplishing what we set out to accomplish as an organization. So I'm going to leave. And then the social pressure is turned on to keep people there. And obviously that is not a healthy way. The better way to do it would be to actually resolve the issues.
Mm-hmm. And to acknowledge that maybe not everyone is a good fit for your organization. I mean, if if Carl really cares about the production value and the organization does not care at all about production value, it could be something where they come to an understanding about why it's not a priority. Or it could be something where maybe Carl would be interested in a different organization. But because this is a cult, they want everyone to stay. And instead of acknowledging that people might have different preferences or different needs, they just say, no, everyone needs to stay here. Everyone needs to be involved. No one can get out.
You are guaranteed a perfect life of serenity, love.
They're all
loving
happy.
Serenity. Not a guarantee.
Even Mo.
Loving serenity. It's about damn time.
I love
The leader is perfect.
Wait, I'm confused about the movie. So the cops knew that internal affairs was setting them up?
What are you talking about? There's nothing like that in there.
I see, when I get bored, I make up my own movie. I have a very short attention span.
But our point is very simple. You see, when...
Oh, look, a bird!
You what?
Come again, Marge?
You what?
I've joined the Movementarians, and so have all of you.
We what?
All I had to give them was our life savings, the deed to the house, and a commitment of 10 trillion years of labor.
I can't go along with this, Homer.
Marge, when I join an underground cult, I expect a little support from my family.
Dad, do you think you might have been brainwashed?
I have not been brainwashed. Kill the girl. Kill the girl.
In a lot of nonprofits that get called cults, a lot of times people look at people who are part of them, whether it's a church or a nonprofit that's doing volunteer work or is just basically gathering a lot of people together to accomplish something. People start to say like, oh, have you been brainwashed? Because they start to adopt a lot of the same language and stuff that's thrown around in the culture of the nonprofit. Culture is a bunch of unspoken rules and a bunch of unspoken things that happen in an organization, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, but they're not necessarily inherently bad. It's when organizations start to leverage those things in very unhealthy ways that it can turn cult-like.
Now, as an organization and as a leader, you need to have those unspoken rules in place. Otherwise, things just go completely chaotic. But the problem is when a leader sees someone who is acting on those unspoken things in a degree that isn't healthy, and yet they choose to stand up and applaud them because they're like, this person is so committed that they are 100% in, not realizing that you are making an example of someone who has actually taken those unspoken things and the culture of your organization into an unhealthy place, because there still has to be a distinction between the organization and the individual and what the cause is that they're trying to help. I see this sometimes with churches. It's really easy for people to get involved in a church and see the pastor of that church as like, this is who I'm supposed to follow. This is who I'm supposed to duplicate. This is who I'm supposed to get all my answers from. It's like, well, no, if this is a faith-based organization, you're actually supposed to be following Jesus and you're supposed to be getting your answers from scripture, and this place helps facilitate it. If someone's joining a different organization, it might be, I really care about helping the hungry people, but the only people who can help the hungry people are the people in this organization. We are the only ones who can actually accomplish it. In other organizations, even if they're helping, they're not doing it right. When it becomes a us versus them and the identity becomes about that particular organization, it can turn into this really not great thing. And it's made worse when the leader then applauds the person who has taken on that identity to an extreme, rather than applauding the people who are living in a way that's much more healthy and long-term sustainable.
So just to be clear, just because something is called a cult doesn't necessarily mean it is a cult. However, if your organization is being called a cult in whatever sector that you're in, it's a good idea to take a look at the structures in your organization and see what might be tipping that off, because you will probably find that there are some really unhealthy cult-like behaviors going on, if that's even being flagged in people's minds at all. And this is a chance for you to kind of mitigate and change some things and make your organization run honestly better anyway. Cults are generally dysfunctional. So if you are able to make your organization a little less like a cult, even if it's not technically a cult, but getting further away from being a cult, that's a good thing. I think the lines get blurred a lot because in nonprofit, the name of the game is trust. But in a cult, it's enforced trust, where a nonprofit has to build real trust. So if you're building real trust, you're in the clear. But if you are enforcing trust, you must trust me because blank, then we're in bad territory. You need to figure out how to fix that right away.
Church, cult, church. So we get bored someplace else every Sunday. Does this really change our day-to-day lives?
Of course not, except that we're all moving to the movementarian agricultural compound to be near the leader and serve him.
I'm not leaving my home.
Oh, yes, you are. I'm afraid it's our home now. This house will become the new local welcome center for this district.
And it didn't cost us a dime.
Homer's just so stupid. I love it. But it's a tip off to society because obviously nobody's really as stupid as Homer is, but he is a parody on average people just kind of doing stupid things. And for whatever reason, people do get sucked into unhealthy amounts of dedication to organizations, whether that's way too much volunteering, way too much giving for what's healthy for their family and their finances, way too much involvement in an organization. It's our job as leaders to help people, especially people who don't have really good barriers and boundaries for themselves, to help them make healthier choices. If you have a volunteer that's always at your organization and they're never at home with their family and it's causing problems for their family, there's something going on. And as a leader, if you care about that person, you care about their family, you're going to have a conversation with them and say, hey, what's going on? How can we encourage you to have a healthier family life rather than just kind of escaping here all the time?
You have so much more faith in humanity than me. No one's as dumb as Homer. No, a lot of people are, though.
Besides, this is just another place for me to wreak my special brand of hysterical havoc. These rubes and robes haven't met the likes of Bart Simpson before. I love the leader.
Of course you do.
Oh,
is nothing but a pack of weird rituals and chants designed to take away the money of fools. Let us say the Lord's Prayer 40 times, but first let's pass the collection plate.
Wow.
I mean, this just continues to point out a lot of similarities between cult behavior and nonprofit, church, just different organizations that ask for donations, different organizations that use strategies like vision casting and having a mission and doing something and accomplishing something, getting people excited about the future. I mean, when you're in the for-profit world, money is the main metric that you can use to drive everything, whether the profits are high, this is what we want to keep doing. If the profits are low, we want to stay away from some of those things. But in nonprofit work, there are all these different facets and little kind of buttons you need to be pushing and dials you need to be moving all the time.
Right.
And those same things are leveraged in cults to make bad things happen.
That made me tear up. Vision works. It changes how people understand what you're doing. It changes how people understand the work that's happening. It changes how people interact with the work that's happening. And that can be used as a tool in order to help something move forward in a good way, or it can be used as a tool to help someone who is a bad, not necessarily technically bad, but like bad at heart leader to manipulate people to get what they want, not for the betterment of people or the cause or the business, but for their own personal gain in a negative way. Like, to be clear, just because someone is in the for-profit and is a business owner and wants to make additional money doesn't automatically make them an evil leader. But we see across all leadership is there's the possibility of using these tools for good or for harm. And we need to be careful with those because it's a slippery slope to use it for good most of the time. And then every once in a while, turn the tool into a bludgeon in order to just get what we want one more time.
I'm leaving this place, and you'd better step aside.
Lady, people are free to go whenever they wish.
Go March!
You can do it! Dodge the dogs! A bubble? What was that? When you do make the decision to leave a nonprofit organization, whether you're on staff and you're like, this isn't working out, or if you're a volunteer or a donor and you're just like, you know what, I want to find a different organization to go support or whatever it might be, or maybe you're moving away. No matter what, it feels like you got a minefield to run through because there are a lot of relationships and things that are holding you back. Now, usually, hopefully not, usually there isn't an actual minefield and actual alligators, but there are things that come up that try to keep you in the organization. Now,
Depending on your experience, this scene might feel super relatable, or it might seem like, oh my gosh, that's such an extreme. But even if there isn't all of this external stuff set up, it is difficult to leave because of, like Ted said, the relationships that we've built and those connections that we have. Depending on the organizational leadership, there can also be the additional external minefields of, I don't know what they're going to tell people about why I left. I don't know how many relationships I'm going to be able to keep intact. Or that whole, there are some organizations that when people leave, they're like, yeah, sometimes people leave, but we want to maintain the relationships. Other organizations have the attitude that if you're not with us, you're against us. And once you leave, no one here will talk to you anymore. And that organization very often gets the word cult thrown around because of that behavior and that attitude. As a leader of an organization, you need to be paying attention to how people are being treated as they leave, because your attitude toward people leaving is what is reflected in everyone else in the organization, and people will take the small things you do and twist them and bring them up to like the nth degree of acting that out. And it can be tough as a leader because when people leave, it hurts. When people leave, like there is a change that happens, but we need to be careful that we are not creating this type of environment where people feel like in order to leave, I have to run, I have to dodge all the possible things, I have to stay hidden, and I have to make sure no one sees me in the process. And then when I'm away, there's no way to reconnect that relationship. Because just because someone leaves for a little bit doesn't mean that they were looking to leave permanently. Mm-hmm. They might have been thinking this is just not the right season and thinking that they could keep the door open so that they could come back. And the way that you treat them when they leave is really, it'll determine whether or not they even consider coming back in the future. Now, if you found this video interesting, we have another one where we check out a South Park episode.
We'll see you over there.